I'd like to call to order the Board of Selectmen special meeting of the Town of Woodbridge for Monday, August 1st, 2016. And the first item on our agenda is a recap of the Country Club of Woodbridge meeting we held on July 27th, a review and discussion of what happened at that time. And what I'd like to do first is thank all of the residents who turned out. We had about 300 people expressing their interest in this topic. We just started, Maria, so good to go. And I think, like the others on the Board of Selectmen, I certainly was very pleased that we were able to bring two proposals worthy of vetting to the public, and that the Board of Selectmen agreed that both proposals should be presented. I'd like to take a couple of minutes just to say the main elements for people who might be watching tonight who weren't there. And
Your microphone on.
no, these aren't working. We're not using them. Yeah, that's okay. So there were two presenters at the meeting, Toll Brothers and Roland Betts of Redan Reserve. And the Toll Brothers proposal was for 80 units of over 55 housing. Toll was proposing to purchase 42 acres on which they would build 65 single-family homes and 15 what they call carriage homes, which are attached townhomes. It would be senior housing that would be zone restricted for senior housing. Again, it would have been approximately 42 acres that were sold. The town would retain 113 acres. The payment to the town would be $5 million, and the net taxes to the town, once all the units were built, is estimated at $600,000 per year. It would eliminate the remaining town debt on the property. The town would still have the responsibility for remediation of the property, which we think will be about $500,000. It would require zone modification, which is, I know, of concern to many residents and to members of our board. With respect to recreational opportunities, as I mentioned, the town would retain 113 acres, and that would allow the pool to continue if that's what the town decided to do. It could include tennis, walking and bike trails, or other recreational opportunities. The proposal would include a conservation easement on a portion or all of the retained town lands. This proposal was not contingent on financing, but was contingent that it have the support of the Board of Selectmen, at least a majority, and I think, like all of our proposers, looking for strong support from the Board of Selectmen. Certainly if it was a tie, Toll was not interested in going forward. Now, Redan Reserve is a proposal that came to us from Roland Betts. He is the person who formed Redan Reserve. And his concept is to transform the Woodbridge Golf Course into a championship top 100 course in conjunction with the Yale Golf Course, to make it a destination for very serious golfers playing in the top 100 type of course. It would not include any development, no housing. It would be for the entire 155 acres. The town would retain none of the property. It would all be sold. The proposed payment is $3.5 million. The revenue from this on a yearly basis would be approximately $70,000, with possible additional revenue subject to the ongoing negotiations with Redan Reserve. I should mention, with respect to the clubhouse, in Redan, the developer would demolish it at no cost to the town. In the Toll proposal, the town would still have the obligation to deal with the clubhouse in one way or another. We've talked about the range of options. Unlike the Toll proposal would eliminate the remaining debt, if the $3.5 million were used to reduce debt, we would have about just under $1.5 million remaining, at an average debt service cost of $125,000 per year for the remaining 14 years, and that would be down from $400,000. This would be a special permit, not a zoning change. which I know is important to many people. It would be a public course. Town residents would be able to use the course for cross-country skiing in the winter. It would be available for walking. I know some questions have been raised about walking during golf, but Mr. Betts was confident that it could accommodate walking. And there would be a conservation easement on the property. As I said, no contingency for financing. The major contingencies on this plan are that Yale University agree that their golf course be part of this plan. Redan is proposing to purchase the Woodbridge property and enter into a long-term lease with Yale. And we don't have any indication yet where Yale is on that. Of course, the city of New Haven would also have to agree and grant the zoning necessary, and there probably would need to be state approvals as well. So they were two very different proposals, and again, two proposals that the Board of Selectmen concluded were worthy of presentation to the town, so we could hear from town residents about them. I do want to say, and I think it was clear at the meeting too, that we have these two proposals. If either of them is to go forward, it's up to the town residents. The Board of Selectmen does not decide on a sale of property. It's up to the residents. But also, we don't have to go ahead with either one of them. There is also great interest in the town to actually convert the property into true open space, and that's something we can talk about doing as well. So all of this is on the table as we proceed this evening and over the next weeks. A little bit about how we got to these proposals. I just wanted to mention that these proposals were not presented as final negotiations. Hopefully we're going to speak this evening about what the board would be interested in seeing. With respect to the toll proposal, we had not concluded as a board that any proposal before this one merited going to the public for consideration at the different amounts and proposals, the different elements of the proposals. In fact, the first one, the board did come to consensus that we did not think the town would consider it, nor did the board think we should. I think it was 170 units, and we all agreed that was too many. This proposal was much stronger in that it represented a 50% increase in payments per unit. Toll had originally been proposing in the area of $43,000 per unit, and this was $63,000 per unit. So it was stronger, and I think that's one of the things that helped the board decide that something for the town to look at. With respect to the Redan proposal, Roland Betts first came to me late last year to say he had this big idea about combining Yale and Woodbridge to make a top 100 course with a hotel or conference center on the Yale property. And he asked if I thought this would be viable and of interest to people in Woodbridge, because if it would not be, he was not even going to raise it with Yale. As he said, at that point he saw a three-legged stool. I have to think it's at least 4, if not 5, but he would have to have Woodbridge and Yale and the hotel developer that he was interested in. So all of those pieces had to be in place, but if the town of Woodbridge said there is no way we'd ever consider that, that would be the end of it. And so I said I thought it would be of interest to the town, and he went back and spoke to Yale and others about it. In the meantime, of course, I did my due diligence. I did not know Mr. Betts or anything about him, and Tony and I did the research. We understood that after doing the due diligence that he was the developer of Chelsea Piers in New York and in Stamford. He was a co-owner of the Texas Rangers and is a very, very successful entrepreneur and businessman. During the spring, I informed the Board of Selectmen that someone had come with this big idea with Yale, but we had no proposal and no details nor any indication about where Yale was. I mean, we've had other proposals also or ideas come to us that don't turn into proposals, and we all agreed we'd wait till it was a proposal. In mid-May was the first time we talked about any possible terms, and on June 30th, I received the first written proposal from Redan. I was actually surprised given the sort of informal talks we've had, and I told him that that proposal was unacceptable and I would not bring it forward. First and foremost because it did not have a permanent conservation easement. In other words, he had terms where he would be able to buy the property, turn it into a golf course or not, and then sell it for other purposes. And that's one of the things we've been very clear about, wanting to control the destiny of this property beyond the next purchaser. So I said that would not be acceptable. And in addition, he was offering $3.5 million, which he's offering now, but in his proposal, the town would have taken responsibility for demolishing the clubhouse and moving the cell tower. Together, those costs would probably be in excess of $1.25 million. So it made the net proposal quite low indeed. On June 11th, I received the revised proposal, which I then brought to the board on July 13th, where he agreed to a conservation easement, or at least proposed it. Again, this is all in his proposal, a permanent conservation easement, and Redan taking responsibility for the costs. So the net change in the proposal actually was over 35% just from that conversation. And then after we looked at it and discussed it at our July 13th meeting, we agreed that this was worthy of the town looking at and vetting as well. I just also want to make sure everybody knows that since these proposals have come in, I have not negotiated any further with either of the parties, and perhaps tonight we'll have some discussion, probably an executive session, about next steps that the board would like to see. At the meeting on the 27th, I found, and we'll open it up to the board in just a moment, the comments were generally enthusiastic about the Redan proposal. There was some, but not as much support expressed for the toll proposal, and there was not much concern about finances as a prime consideration. Also, there were questions raised about the value of the property and the adequacy of the amounts being offered in the two proposals, particularly the Redan proposal. Because negotiations are ongoing, I really think it's best and in the best interest of the town not to discuss in detail how we assess these proposals at this time. But again, I would say that we all agreed on this board that the proposals were strong enough to be brought forward, and that the amounts are not egregiously low. And also, just to respond to Maria's assertion that I ignored her proposal with respect to certain golf developers and Steve Miller, I do want to assure everyone that I followed up with every one of those. Maria, I assume you did not, or you would know that I had spoken with them, and nothing came forward from those. So
I didn't know that.
They're the people who Jim Urbano brought, I think she's.
Yeah, and
I know exactly
yeah.
what she's talking about,
Yeah.
but there were other comments from their side, and I didn't think that there was a good follow-up on them. But be that as it may, we're not talking about those now.
Okay, that's fine. I just wanted to make clear that any reasonable proposal or suggestion that's come to us, we have followed up, and there have been many. So if anyone else would like to comment about the meeting, what you heard, what you'd like to see going forward, happy to hear. Beth?
Well, I got to talk last week, but I do have some comments, but if you guys want to start first.
Try to talk loud enough so that
Oh,
these
I'm
microphones
sorry.
pick it up.
Go ahead.
First of all, I had a couple questions that I think we should save for executive session related to money.
Okay.
And so if we're going to do that, I'll bring them up at that point. I did have someone, I had gotten some, this is more residents' comments than mine per se. I forwarded you guys a letter from the Wortels that I got and this afternoon. And I think, well, anyway, it's there for reading. I had a question about Redan leasing the property from Yale, but purchasing the property from Woodbridge, and I just wanted to somehow get that out there, because I don't think that came up last week. Someone asked me about that, and I didn't have an answer.
Do you want to just go one at a time? And that's your
Yeah,
first
okay,
question.
and then I got one more, and I'll open it up, because I got a lot of them answered last week. So, you want me to keep...
Well, in terms of, Redan is talking to Yale, I don't think there's my impression certainly is that there is no possibility that Yale would sell its golf course. And he's talking about a long-term lease. From the point of view of the town, we did consider whether a long-term lease would be more beneficial to the town.
Right.
And concluded that it really would be in our interest to sell the property so that we could get the funds now to pay down the debt
Right.
and to move forward.
Right.
It's not out of the question,
Who concluded that?
but
Who concluded?
I concluded it in talking with
You said
them.
we, I was
Yeah,
just
well,
curious who that
those of us
was.
talking with Redan, that
Which is
really
you,
Tony.
You, Tony, and,
Jerry and Andy Esposito.
okay.
I sat in on those meetings.
Andy Esposito.
Board of Finance.
Yep. Board of Finance, business person, he sat in on the meetings.
Well, go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay. The last thing I wanted to say was walking away from that meeting. Sometimes it's not always about the money, and I think financially, perhaps maybe the Toll Brothers looks better for the town. But being said, the calls and the comments from the other night and those that I received over the weekend, sort of surveying the pulse of the town, if you will. I really think that, in my opinion, Redan is, if I can opine on that now, or should I do it at the end of the meeting? I think it has a lot more support from the residents and also from me. So, okay, and I got everything else answered last week. So, thank you. Or open space.
Maria?
The one thing that concerned me, and I expressed some of it in my article that I wrote, was we found out that you had been talking to Redan since November, but never presented that to the Board of Selectmen at that time. I mean, I think that I was voted to represent or give my voters a chance to express their opinions along the way, but that never happened. And then there were many other proposals, but you made the sole judgment that these are the only two that were worthwhile. I mean, this is going to be the biggest decision this town is going to make. So every proposal means something. I mean, what I heard in the street was there were smaller proposals perhaps or whatnot, but still under negotiation, and you did not really entertain them or did not show enthusiasm about them whatsoever. So I felt that, I was elected to be able to represent my voters, and you can't do that when suddenly Mr. Betts is saying, that's it, that's all I can offer, right now, this is going to be it. Anything else would be a deal breaker. But you'd already been negotiating, apparently. I personally don't agree with that, and I have a lot of people who don't as well. Have asked me to tell you this tonight.
Okay, I will just set the record straight once more, that any proposal that came to me in writing, I brought to the board. And I received Roland Betts' proposal just shortly before I brought it to the board. Not only that, I told the board in general terms about Mr. Betts's concept, but we had nothing in writing. In fact, as late as...
When was that? I must have missed that
I
meeting.
think it was an executive
It was
session.
an
It was
executive
It was
session.
executive session, that's why we
When-
couldn't talk about
Yeah,
it.
so
I think it's when you were in Italy.
It had to be because
Right. Now
there's
that
no
you
way
say
I
it.
heard anything
Then
about
maybe-
Mr. Betts.
Then maybe it was when you were in Italy, but I
do
did,
remember it.
because I did
No,
want
but I
was
to...
would have known the
executive
project.
Yeah,
I
it
could
was
have connected the
executive
dots.
session.
Okay, I
Because
just
it was
wanted to
it
be
was
sure.
a concept, it wasn't
Because
a written proposal.
I
as
wanted to
recall.
make clear that when people, look, somebody came and wanted to do a sculpture garden. Somebody came and wanted to convert the clubhouse into a church. Somebody said she wanted to buy the property. She'd never been in business before. She had no financial credentials. And Betsy met with her. I didn't actually meet with her. It wasn't clear to us if she was offering $4,500, $4.5 million. She had no background at all. Joe had somebody he had been talking about for quite a while. His friend was interested. He called Tony periodically and would have an idea and not have an idea. The first time he brought something to us in writing, I brought it to the board. So there has been absolutely nothing held back once it was a reasonable proposal. And I would say, in addition, that some members of this board did say to me that perhaps it was a little too early to go ahead with Redan because we didn't have more sense of a commitment from Yale, because remember, without Yale, this is nothing. But given who Roland Betts is, and I did my due diligence, I followed up with Yale. I spoke to Bruce Alexander at Yale just to confirm that they were indeed having the conversations. So I take strong exception to your characterization, Maria.
I'd like to say one
Okay.
thing also, just look at the charter, and under the charter, it spells out what the board does and what the first selectman does. Maria, have you ever looked at the charter? Have you seen
I
it?
haven't seen it lately.
Do you know
but
what the first selectman's duties are?
what are they?
The
They're not
first
mine.
selectman shall be the chief.
Okay.
First
Yeah.
selectman,
Let's-
listen, let me read this. The first selectman shall be the chief administrative and executive officer of the town. That means she's the CEO. In normal
Right.
circumstances, the CEO hears proposals, processes information, and then brings it to the board. It is under no circumstances an obligation of the board to fulfill its obligations to its voters or whoever you
Does
say
that
it is.
include bringing other people from the town into negotiating sessions?
Oh, yeah, the
That's at
chief
my
executive
discretion.
officer of a board manages the day-to-day activities of the board.
I would just make a suggestion that in the future,
Right.
this board should know about that.
Yeah, before anybody
that's
else.
good, you know,
yeah, right.
If that, I'm not
That's fine.
disputing she may not have the, may or may not have the
power.
authority to do
Right,
that,
Right.
but I would think that this board should know about that.
It's clear she has the authority, and it's up to the board to decide whether,
I accept your suggestion, Jay,
yeah, that's a
and I will
decent
do that.
suggestion, right.
So this is the first time, and I certainly accept that. Would anyone else like to
It
say
doesn't
anything at
change
the meeting?
anything, we are where we are.
Of
Yeah.
course, there's no
Yeah,
difference,
sure.
and it's rehashing old ancient history.
Right.
Yeah, Tony?
But some ancient history are significant to the present.
Not this one, though.
Well,
Okay, that's
Can I
enough.
tell a
Let's-
story?
No, let's go on to Tony.
Well, Maria, you can finish, you have something.
Well,
to say.
Tony was next. I'll control the meeting. Tony is next.
Oh, we're not speaking to the mic. Okay, so my impression of the other night was a little bit about probably what we've been seeing for the last few years, which was a varying degree of opinions, many opinions. I think that some were proposing that the property be sold to Toll or left to us for open space purposes, for recreational purposes. The pool was mentioned multiple times. Other times, I think people just respectively wanted open space, walking trails, and to leave it not as a golf course, not as a business. So I did hear a little bit of that. Certainly, I think Beth is right. The majority seem to be in favor of at least continuing our talks with the Redan proposal and furthering whatever we can. I have my personal concerns over the moving parts and would certainly like to see more commitment from Yale. That would probably be the number one concern I have. I think New Haven might be a lesser concern as getting Yale to lease the property. I did hear some support for Toll. I heard some people using a flat, to Beth's point about money, a flat dollar amount. 5 million is more than 3.5. And of course, to Ellen's point, there's the issue of the clubhouse, which is, in the past, we've heard $1 million to remove the clubhouse. And so I don't think the 5 million is, you can't really compare 5 to 3.5 because there are circumstances there with the 5 million that we'll be left with and have to decide what we want to do. The only thing I did take away, other than those thoughts, was I was a little bit surprised to hear that more people still seem to be unclear about what the cost would be to rebuild the clubhouse if the town maintained the clubhouse and the pool. I think there's still a lot of confusion as to what that cost would be. Some people feel there's very little cost for us keeping the club and the pool club open. And though we have had a report, and Ellen made mention of it a few times the other night, the latest report that I read from the Herb Newman certainly breaks down, Jerry has it in front of me, certainly breaks down some of those costs. And maybe that's something we need to get out more to the town to have them understand. It isn't that we can just keep the pool and the club and with very little costs run it as a pool and a clubhouse. There would be a severe expense to all those actions. So maybe that's something that we haven't clarified enough to the town, or in all the scuttlebutt about the two different plans. I think people sometimes just equate their own numbers and start to move things around in their head and maybe we should make that more clear of whether or not these two plans, either one of them goes forward, there would be real cost to us to try to provide that clubhouse and that pool club for the residents.
I think that's a good point.
That's all.
Susan, did you want?
You know, it occurred to me sitting there the other night as we were listening to 300 people over the course of 3 hours in a 90-degree room, that really, on balance, it was quite amazing how everyone maintained a courteous, constructive dialogue. There were exceptions. And the exceptions are always unappetizing and unsavory, but I was impressed that for the most part, people were curious, constructive, and courteous, and that was enormously helpful. You know, I think one of the things that we've been struggling with over the past couple of years is that we really have 4 choices. We have ongoing town involvement in operating a golf course. We have possibility of open space, pool, and clubhouse retention. And now we have 2 actual proposals that dovetail with these other choices. And these 2 proposals, it's really the first time that we've had a marketplace, a legitimate marketplace set of choices. See, you rang on the truth. Okay, that must be.
Thanks, Harold.
Right? Thank you. Thank you. Because what we've been struggling with, it seems to me, is this golf operation, the pull that people have toward open space, and only 1 marketplace proposal. Now that we have 2 marketplace proposals, I think it puts this all in very different perspective. And, you know, I think it's lucky because it kind of fell out of the sky.
Right.
On the other hand, nothing else came forward as a second marketplace proposal until it was sort of nurtured along by Ellen, I think, and it really now we have something constructive to contrast and compare. I have to tell you, I think that when I look at this comparison sheet that I think Tony G prepared, right? Mm-hmm. In black and white, it looks to me like Toll Brothers is the better proposal for the town, economically. It creates depth of housing. It creates significant revenue going forward. The town retains the pool, so those people are happy. The town retains the potential for the clubhouse, so those people are happy. The town retains 113 acres, so the open space people are happy. There's something for everyone in this proposal. I don't think it will pass the town, partly because the people who are on the extreme of this issue are willing to say anything and do anything to taint this proposal.
That's the only reason?
That's the reason.
Well, you can have a legitimate disagreement with it, but I also think that there's a fair amount of misinformation and disinformation that people are willing to say. You can have a legitimate disagreement, no question about it. As a result, I think the Redan proposal, on balance, if it will buy peace for the town, is not a terrible proposal. Even though I actually think that the toll proposal has much more depth and much more going for it and speaks to a whole host of community needs. The Redan proposal doesn't even really speak to the golfers' needs. I mean, you're gonna have to drive to New Haven to park and take a bus to put golf in a course that's gonna be much more expensive than is in your town if you're a Woodbridge golfer. I mean, it doesn't.
You're not a golfer, right?
You're not a golfer.
Could not care less.
It's out.
Yeah, it's obvious.
But I'm just saying, okay, it doesn't speak to the same cohort of community needs as the Toll Brothers proposal. I hear what the town is saying. That's where I'm coming from.
Anyone else? Joe, did you want to say anything? Just
Yeah, I have a question. First, I would probably, if I were inclined to speak passionately, take the opposite view of Susan just there. But I think we got a long way to go to get there. And
Right, I agree.
But I would say I prefer the Redan proposal to the toll proposal. In fact, I'm struggling with whether or not toll is a proposal, because I heard you say early on that a condition of their proposal. And my question is this a condition now on the record? Because you said that they want a majority. If the board's not a majority,
Right,
then
right.
it's not a proposal. So in my mind, I'm not sure it's a proposal.
That may be.
Maybe,
That,
yeah.
that may be, maybe we need to take a straw.
Well, so I
vote
guess
to
the
know.
question is did Toll put a condition on their proposal on the record that if there's not a majority on the board, they're pulling it?
It may
They
just be
did
a
tell-
reality.
No, they did tell
Well,
me that.
but
It's-
it
I
wasn't
don't-
posed as a reality, it was posed as a condition, so that's why I'm trying to clear that up.
They did say that was a condition, that if it was a split board, they would not go forward.
Okay. So that's number
Yeah.
one. And I would concur with Tony that I have hesitancy with Redan, although I favor the proposal. I think it's incumbent for Yale to agree to their leg of the three-legged stool before we go too far with this, put it before our folks, because what is it at this point in time? I mean, it's really a Yale project. It's going to be a golf course at Yale, and they're shuttling us up here, and that's fine, and we're part of that. But I think Yale needs to get his 99-year lease from Yale.
I couldn't get him to agree to call it the Woodbridge Golf Course.
No, I don't think any of that's in the plan, and that doesn't concern me, because I think we can all
understand.
project out what the marketing is going to
Right.
be for this. But,
Right.
you know.
So let me just say, I take it from this conversation, it's jumping a little bit ahead in the agenda, that it will be worthwhile for us to go into executive session to talk about the two proposals and what, if anything, the board would like to see coming up next. But we'll get to that in a moment. Maria, you wanted to say something else?
I agree with you. I think that we should have that executive session first. We should really hash out the two proposals, and then go into executive session with regards to Billy Casper, where, I don't want a situation where we're discussing Billy Casper and having it to fit into those proposals, as opposed to we should really consider the big picture and then put Casper in it if it has a place in it. So I think we should spend more time in this executive session with regards to the proposals.
Oh, okay, but my agenda is we're going to take up Billy Casper first. And I think
know that.
I think we can take up Billy Casper in any event, because any agreement we enter into with Billy Casper would include a provision that if the town votes to sell all or part of the property, we can cancel the contract. So I
Okay.
don't think that really, we need
Probably
to change
doesn't
the
matter.
order
Okay.
for that reason. So if there's nothing else generally, why don't we turn to Billy Casper? For the town's edification, anyone who's listening and doesn't know this, when the town first entered into an agreement with Billy Casper Golf to manage the golf course, the town took the risk. Any loss in operations would be on the town, and any profits, the town would take the profits. That resulted in some very tough years for the town of Woodbridge. It cost us quite a bit of money, and at the end of 2013, we were able to renegotiate the contract for 3 years, where the town no longer took the risk. And Maria, you were not on the board then, but I think I can say that all of us welcomed that change. And it was very important change as well, because one of the things that Moody's investors had noted in their report was that the uncertainty of the golf course operation was something to keep an eye on. And once we changed the contract, Moody's noted that, I'm not sure they actually said that, but that was eliminated as a concern. So from my way of thinking, it is very important to have a contract where the town is not at risk. We are not in the golf business. Billy Casper has now written to us to say, now again, the contract ends at the end of this year. They are willing to go ahead for one more year, but only if we revert to the old type of contract where we take the risk. Here's what Billy Casper says. This is quoted from their letter We are increasingly uncomfortable assuming a risk position due to the operational challenges negatively impacting the financial viability of CCW. Specifically, the aging infrastructure, growing capital needs, variable utilities expense, and uncertainty about the future existence of the golf course are a growing detriment to current and future revenue streams, membership, and outings. The board also has, and we looked at this on the 27th, the current data about usage of the golf course. There are 137 members this year, of which 35 are Woodbridge residents. The total rounds this year are 15,000, of which fewer than 10%, 1,428, were resident rounds. And of unique golfers, there were 201 Woodbridge resident golfers out of 4,800 unique golfers. That is less than 5%. So that was the information we had last week. Some members asked for a pro forma from Billy Casper Golf, which we obtained and distributed to the board. We have that now. And that showed Billy Casper operating actually at a loss. They have 2014, 15, and projected 2016. Yeah.
Is that what that was? Because I didn't
Yeah.
know if that was through, so that's a
No,
projected
it's projected
year end?
for the year.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
yes. It wasn't entirely clear, and it would have looked amazing if it was.
Well, that's why I was
Right.
hoping that it was not
No.
a projected year end. Okay.
So this is the backup data, to, I guess, what drove them to their position. So I would like to suggest that if the consensus of the board is that we will be negotiating further with Billy Casper, you might want to go into executive session. If, on the other hand, you feel that we will not assume a risk position and go back to the old model, I don't think we need to discuss further negotiations, and I leave that to the board.
I want to make sure I understand this pro forma.
Sure.
So are they saying that projected for 2016, it's likely that that the club is going to be operating, the golf operation is going to operate at an 18% loss? That's what they're saying. And
Yes.
that based on current revenue, that 18% loss is $185,000.
182, 120.
Well, 182.
So, yes.
My print's really small.
And what this does not show
182,
is
yeah.
the payment of the town, which brings Billy Casper up to about even. We certainly would not be getting any revenue back this year.
Right.
And again, this is their projected, but
Right.
yes, that's correct.
Okay.
So I wasn't here for your negotiations initially, so the town will be paying how much to Casper?
Now, currently?
No, not now currently, but if we were to go, they said we have to revert to the old negotiation.
Oh, I see. Uh-huh.
Okay, so what were we paying then?
$6,500 a month
And that's-
would be the payment, and we would take the risk
We
on
pay month
profit
by
or loss.
month.
Yes.
That's a management fee. They call it
Management
that.
fee and everything else, any expenses is still ours.
Hours.
Including, if I'm not mistaken, payroll, right?
No,
Payroll, everything.
Everything.
Everything on the sheet.
Everything.
I mean, everything is out of
Insurance,
our
payroll.
pocket.
Right.
Right.
Clubhouse expenses.
And you know, Billy Casper has said that 2015 was about as good a year as you can get with respect to weather.
Right.
Gina's here, she probably could confirm that it was an extraordinary year. And even in that year, they were showing a smaller loss, showing a
Well,
loss.
are we going to discuss these in
You want to go?
open or what?
Well,
I don't-
that's
I
a
don't much
question.
care, but
I think we should go into executive session.
Would you like to make a motion, Maria?
I place a motion that I put for the motion to go in executive session with regards to this.
With regard to the Billy Casper golf
golf
contract.
negotiation.
All right, is there a second?
I'll second.
Any questions or discussion? If not, all those in favor?
Anybody else?
Oh, and yes,
I'm just
well, say, all those in
asking.
favor? Aye.
Aye.
Sorry.
And we will invite town council to the,
Tony's still out, right?
Tony is out. It's definitely a handicap. Our finance director is on vacation.
No pun intended.
But we'll,
That's a golf term.
so we'll now go into executive session. We'll ask you to please leave the room. Okay, we have now concluded the executive session in which we discussed the Billy Casper draft proposal of July 25th, 2016. The board had a very robust discussion about the proposal, which included a review of the letter, relevant portions of which I read just before we went into executive session, but the most important point being that Billy Casper Golf will only go forward if the town assumes the risk of golf operations going forward. We also reviewed the profit and loss statements, which show a loss every year for 2014-15 and projected for 2016. And the board's analysis projects that it would be possible that if the town went forward with the new proposal from Billy Casper, we could be looking at a loss of several $100,000 next year. In the past, when the town did take the risk of loss, we did have losses in that range. We do not believe that the town should be in the risky golf business. That is not something appropriate for the town. Among all the other risks, there's the variable of weather, which we certainly can't control in any way, and that going back to the type of arrangement we had before would not be in the best interest of the town. Again, also, we realized that we could not consider any kind of proposal for more than 1 year, nor was Billy Casper interested in it, given the other proposals that we are considering. We also talked again about the issue of Moody's Investors, where they had noted that taking the unknown risk of golf operations was something to watch for the town of Woodbridge, and it was something we worked very hard to eliminate from the risks of the town. We talked also about the estimates we have that improvements to this golf course to make it viable are in the range of $3 to $5 million at a minimum, and we've had more than one golfing expert tell us that. So with that said, does anyone want to add anything about the discussion? Any other factors?
No.
Well, I just wanted to say that, my personal decision is I do it with a light heart because it is really irresponsible after the analysis to continue with Billy Casper.
So with that said, is there a motion that the board not accept the proposal in Billy Casper Golf's letter of July 25th, 2016?
So moved.
Second.
Any other questions or discussion? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. We now move on to item number 4, which is a proposed executive session regarding the two proposals that we do have for the future of the property. The Toll Brothers proposal and the Redan draft, both draft proposals that we have seen before. We saw it at our July meeting. We also presented it to the town on July 27th. At this point, as far as I know, the board, from our earlier discussion, would like to talk more about these proposals and what next steps, if any, we would like to see the town take. And for that reason, I think it's a good idea to go into executive session. I don't know.
I'll make a motion, we go into
I'll second it.
executive session to discuss the revised Toll Brothers proposal dated July 11th, 2016, and the draft proposal from Redan Reserve LLC dated July 11th, 2016.
I'll
Thank you.
second it.
Thank you. Any questions or discussion?
After executive session, are we hoping our goal is to choose one?
Well, not necessarily. I think in executive session, we'll talk about where we want to go with it.
Okay, because our goal is to go into referendum with what?
Well,
Whatever we discuss.
Well, we're
going
gonna
to
talk-
discuss that in executive
All right, I
session.
just wanted to know what the goal is for the executive session.
The goal is to establish the board's will for next steps and see what the board thinks is in the best interest of the town with respect to the two proposals we've received and what would be appropriate to do next.
Okay.
Anything else?
No.
If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Have to clear the room.
Sorry, folks.
Okay, thank you. The board is now out of executive session. I want to mention that both executive sessions this evening, we invited our town council to join us in executive session, and thank him for his counsel. No votes were taken in executive session. The board discussed first the most recent toll proposal, which I described earlier this evening. It is the consensus of the board that given public concerns about the proposal and various concerns of members of the Board of Selectmen with respect to aspects of this proposal, the Board of Selectmen will not recommend the toll proposal for a public vote at this time, nor will we continue negotiations at this time. In addition, I want to mention that Toll has made clear that they will not go forward without the support of at least a majority, if not a strong majority, of the Board of Selectmen, and that is something we would not be able to satisfy in any event. The board also discussed the Redan proposal, and the Board of Selectmen provided guidance on key elements of continued negotiations with Redan with respect to the proposal. We also discussed the fact that we now have two possible proposals before us. We have the Redan proposal, which has various elements that need more development, including, of course, the Yale commitment. And we also have the option of converting the property to open space, which is something that we know our town residents are very interested in. They've expressed their concern about open space and the desire to have this property be available to them. The board has asked for a more detailed analysis of the costs of converting to open space. We've had some numbers from Tony Genovese, but we will definitely do a detailed analysis with, different iterations and options for the clubhouse and other aspects. I also want to mention that Tony Genovese is away this week. He was away last week. We have various vacations scheduled and coming up, but we will proceed as expeditiously as possible. Would anyone like to add anything to that? Okay, if not, is there
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
any discussion? No, there's no discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you very
Thank you.
much.